Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. It's Mark. Before we get into the next episode, and I'm excited to talk about that topic today, but I wanted to talk a little bit first about what my plans are for podcasting going forward. It really started with an idea that I have of making conversations that I'm having already with people in paint, making them available for you guys to listen to. And as that thought sort of expanded sort of creatively in my mind in terms of what might make that interesting, I think that even though I speak about paint with so many of you or aspects of the paint industry with so many of you, I also speak to so many of you about a wide range of topics. Even during these surveys, many of the conversations have gone off in different directions. We've spoken about infrastructure, interestingly enough, because I'm going to mention that again in a second, infrastructure within the United States. By coincidence, I tripped over a conversation on that topic with two of the dealers that I surveyed. So other things like that, even outside of the paint industry, we talk about our lives and we talk about our interests. And I always felt like that was sort of the interesting part of the conversation, but I always cut that out because I'm putting out paint content and have sort of always been putting out paint content. But as paint becomes less in my life and other things move forward, I've been wanting to try something different. And so what I have in mind is a series which I'm hoping to start producing later in this summer and then maybe late in the summer, early in the fall come out. So this will be it for podcasts for me, just these three that I'm going to introduce today with Steve. This will be it for me for a few weeks after that. But then after that, I'm really hoping to come out with something new and different, maybe even hopefully a bit on the edgy side. That's sort of what I enjoy. And so I'm looking forward to showing you a different type of content in addition to the paint content. And all of this, of course, is all going to be around us, the paint industry, paint dealers, primarily at the center of this. And so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. In the meantime, I've got these three episodes, which all came from one long conversation that I had with Steve, which sort of happened as the inspiration for this new series. Just one conversation with no prep. We just sort of knew in advance what we wanted to talk about on the general topic and then no other prep. And so what you get is what I feel is a genuine conversation. And that's what I think makes them so enjoyable to listen to. And I do know that a bunch of you have been listening and watching. And so I'm glad that it's reaching you in that way. And so that's the intention with this new series, is to just try to create authentic conversations with people in the paint industry. And what I'm trying to do is get people to agree to schedule a 45-minute phone call with me. And then in that 45 minutes, we'll talk some paint and we'll talk about other things that might be interesting to that particular person. Some things that are interesting to me. From my life. It could be cars, it could be music, it could be, raising your children. It could be anything else. Some of these conversations that Steve and I had about the infrastructure and the condition of cities, which I'm about to queue up for you. I think that other people in the paint industry are interested in those sorts of conversations as well. And so I'm going to put that out there, see what you guys think. I hope that you enjoy it. You know how to reach me if you do or you don't. In the meantime, this introduction that I'm recording now is really going to be used for three episodes, the final three with Steve. Let me just set each of those up for you now. If you're here and watching for the first episode, that'll be about the surveys that I'm undertaking right now with independent retailers. I spent the better part of last week, and I still have the tail end of the work to do this week, interviewing independent retailers for a client of mine who has hired me to survey the sentiment of independent retailers towards their paint manufacturers. And so for the last, like I said, week or so, I've been calling dealers, recording their responses to some questions that had been designed, in advance. So it's a script that we follow. I've enjoyed it. It's led to, each one of them should take about 20 minutes. If we just get on and go through the work, it's about 20 minutes, but most of them have been taking more like 30 to 45. with some even stretching to an hour, just because they end up engendering sort of these really interesting conversations about paint and relationships with all vendors, not just the paint manufacturers, as well as other things. What I've mentioned here today, just infrastructure or raising children or life in America or music or what have you. And so these surveys have really been, I just can't believe, honestly, that somebody pays me to do this, because it's basically the opportunity to ask all the questions that you always wanted, and the people that I'm asking seem to want to share. And so I think at some point when I can put some thought into it, I will be able to share some of what I'm learning. Most of this is owned, all of this information is owned by somebody else, so I won't be able to share it. But there is a lot going on here that I will be able to share. And so I look forward to doing that maybe in another podcast episode, or maybe in my blog. And so if you're here watching this introduction for the second of these last 3 episodes with Steve, the last 2 are basically on the same topic. I am having a really interesting experience over the last couple of years that I've been wanting to share, and it's been on my mind to sort of create a format, in fact, just for this over the last couple of months. And in fact, this topic that I get into with Steve is probably the original one that got me thinking I'd like to talk about more than just paint, because it impacted me so significantly. But in the last 2 years of my life, due to some good fortune and some good planning, I've spent a tremendous amount of time traveling. And in the last year or so, with some work that I've been doing, a tremendous amount of that has been in the United States. I've been to some of our largest cities. Of course, I live in the New York metropolitan area and know the city well, but Los Angeles and Milwaukee and Chicago and others around the United States. And also, just due to some good fortune and good planning, done a fair amount of traveling in Europe, and most of that traveling has been to the major cities. And so Guy and I, that's my life partner, my fiance, for those of you who follow the blog, Guy and I have been spending a lot of time over the last couple of years in large European cities. And the difference between American cities and European cities is significant and almost immediately noticeable. And it's been on my mind to share with you here. I don't want to give away too much of the punchline here in the introduction. So you're going to get some of this in episodes 2 and 3 of this series with Steve. I think they're actually number 5 and 6 of the whole series. You're going to get, some honesty on what I experienced, what it's like in U.S. cities, the experience I had staying in U.S. cities, the experience I had transporting myself around U.S. cities, be that using the public transit system, be that using any other pieces of the infrastructure, as compared to that same experience that I had in foreign cities as well. And this is sort of a new venture for me, but as my life is less and less centered around paint, I've wanted to sort of create the portfolio, sort of throw the net a little wider, I should say, on topics that I was willing to cover here, because these are the things that are interesting to me.
So we were talking earlier about a book I read called Happy City by Charles Montgomery. And for my hometown, Kalamazoo, it was a community read book that they put out there. And they follow it up by having community discussions, like small group discussion. And so I read the book and I went to the discussion. But in a nutshell, the author, Montgomery, he talks about how our cities are really geared towards the automobile, very auto-centric. And you combine that with, what was or what still is the American dream of having the home in the suburb with the green lawn and the picket fence around it. But really,
and
what
two
that
cars in the driveway.
2 cars in the driveway, 1.5 kids. And what really studies show that really kind of leads to less community and less connectiveness and more isolation and more loneliness. And interestingly enough, I mean, you kind of see it evidenced by the number of drivers who are in their cars and on the phone and texting and all those problems that it leads to because they're just isolated in their car, they're commuting. And then, with, I think the book was written before COVID, but then with COVID and work from home,
Got
and suddenly,
worse, right?
but then suddenly people are rebelling against having to go back to the office. And the little snippets that I see are like, oh man, it's a 45-minute commute each way. That's an hour and a half I'm losing and blah, blah. So he wrote this book. He studied a lot of cities, both European and some American cities. And, so it turns out when you talk to people, what they want is walkable cities, bikeable cities, a lot of public space, a lot of public resources that are open for free, like libraries and museums, and they want to be able to have areas that are mixed use, right, where you can live where you work. And when we in fact did our follow-up meetings from the community read, we did it with a couple of representatives from the city, and we kind of did like a brainstorming, what would be your ideal city, and those are the issues that came up, walkable, bikeable, connected,
Connected
public
is huge.
resources, public green
Yeah.
spaces,
Yeah.
supporting small businesses,
Yeah.
all that. And so, they write all this down and take it away. And then when the city adopts this 10-year plan to do all that, and they've already started it, we're a couple years into it. The big major thing that people see is they took like the main thoroughfare that goes from through downtown from 4 lanes to 3 because they created a bike lane. And just anecdotally from looking at social media, when they put something out about that, oh my gosh, the resistance is horrible. But in the book, I mean, he talked a lot about how the rise of the automobile, which led to the escape to the suburbs, which was based on the promise of, your own home, your lawn, your picket fence. A man's house is his castle, his car is freedom and independence. And so everyone went out to the suburbs, and nobody's as happy as they were when they lived in a livable, walkable city that's clean with green space. And so a lot of cities are trying to bring that back. You stated earlier, this is something that's developed over 50, 60 years.
Right. It's 50, it's 100
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
The New York
yeah,
City subways are going through the original tunnels from the 1880s or
yeah,
70s.
right. And we don't have a subway infrastructure issue, but just trying to make the downtowns more livable. They did a community comment session, and well, what would make downtown more attractive to live in? And so you get the predictable things. I mean, it's nothing earth-shattering. Green space, access to public buildings, small local businesses, that kind of thing, coffee shops. And so then, the city takes actions to try and get people to walk, to live, so they can access green space and coffee shops, and instead of driving by them at 40 miles an hour, polluting the air, to your point
Yeah.
as well, and noise pollution as well.
And making us unsafe.
Yeah,
Pedestrians and cars they're different, right?
and to the larger point of Montgomery's book, making us happier that we have those kind of connectedness
Yeah.
environments to share with one another in
Yeah.
a clean and safe environment. So, I mean,
Yeah.
cities are working on it, and cities have done a lot to help, but there's a lot to still do.
I'll tell you something that the Europeans all have in all of their cities, and it's magical. I don't know if it's something that Americans would adopt. I think culturally, we're very different. We're very individual. You can
Right.
see walking around cities in Europe, you can see their desire to be a community.
Mm-hmm.
And here's one way where you see that. All the major European cities that I've mentioned, and probably every one that I haven't mentioned, they all have large open areas
Yep.
where people congregate nightly, basically rain or shine. If you're in a city
Mm-hmm.
like London where it rains a lot, you go out in the rain.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have these huge open plazas wide sidewalks, etc., where people come together every night at basically, as their day stops, rather than go home, they
Yeah.
meet their wives and their kids in the plaza or on a
Yeah.
boulevard of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
They sit down, they have a sandwich, they eat in a cafe if that's their thing, or they just walk around, talk to each other, enjoy some fresh air, what have you,
Mm-hmm.
if they're living there. And you feel that around you when you're there. It comes with a level of comfort unattainable in the United States in public
Mm-hmm.
because there's no threat of being shot,
Mm-hmm.
which in any plaza like this in the United States, you run that risk. There's very, very little police presence in these cities.
Yeah.
So you can go into a plaza in Florence and Rome. You can be there in an evening with 3,000 people. You won't see a cop.
Mm-hmm.
You won't see a cop. And the cops that you do see have these cute little guns on them. They're not planning on getting into a shootout.
Yeah.
When we see stuff like that, when there's big crowds in the United States, we all see that. This is not
Yeah.
politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just, I'm just telling you what I see when I walk around. When I'm in Grand Central, there are armed military members permanently stationed in Grand Central Station with
Wow.
large caliber weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of that is risk of terrorism, and so you need some of that.
Right.
But some of them are NYPD.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous feeling to sit someplace and know that you don't have to think about loud noises or
Yeah.
worry at all. And it's recognizable in your consciousness, in my experience.
Mm-hmm. There's a vibe that's different, isn't there?
I would argue that contributing further to that is they're probably happier
Yeah.
than we are because it took them less time to get to work. It cost them less money to get there. It was less frustrating. They were less likely to be shot, so they never had that worry. Like all of
Right.
those things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a real comprehensive thing. I mean, and you're aware, I mean, they do studies, on quote unquote happiness, what are the happiest countries. And the United States does not generally fare well. Nordic countries seem to do real well.
Yeah. And I think
Interestingly
this
enough,
contributes to it. What I
Yeah.
wanted to make a note on, because you had mentioned before, and we were talking about infrastructure, the airports you had mentioned
Mhm.
before, the airports in all of these cities, the train stations in all of these
Mhm.
cities, all of them are connected and efficient at moving people and in outstanding condition
Mhm.
by a comparison to any airport in the United States. I've been using LaGuardia and JFK. LaGuardia's got a brand new terminal. I mean, all right, it's not a shithole anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good, but it's not efficiently moving people.
Yeah.
When you enter the UK, for example, you put your passport face down into a device of some sort. A machine comes up, looks at your face, eyes, whatever the hell it's looking at,
Mhm.
sees a match, and you're through.
Yeah.
15 seconds. Needless to say, the lines are not long. When when you go to Budapest, you had a similar experience, though there were people there, but the
Mhm.
machines were doing, there were more people there. The Brits have it down.
Mhm.
The Brits have it down. Of course, from Budapest to Vienna, that's all open borders now. They're all in the EU, so no
Oh
passports at all.
yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
just going anywhere you want to go nonstop. Flying back to London, coming from Vienna, that's international. You land 15 seconds, you're through.
Mhm. Nice.
Regional airport puts you through 15 seconds. You come back to the United States and not just wait an hour and a half to go through border control,
Mhm.
but you're waiting in areas that are not built even for the
Yeah.
number of people coming through on a process that, listen, call, like I said, tell me that you don't like my politics. You don't even know who I'm fucking voting for here. I'm just telling you that it's every other airport is easier to get through and get in. I'm traveling on a U.S. passport. I've had fucking the same ID, the same name, the same social security number for 61 years.
Yeah.
I've never committed a crime. I've never been arrested. The Brits trust me. Right? Just let me the fuck in. I'm coming home.
Right.
I understand we need security. I'm not saying we don't need security. I'm saying it's me, Mark. What are we talking about here? Let me in.
No, what you're saying is everyone else needs security, but it's you, Mark.
But all of us would fit into that, right? The truth is that of the 350 million Americans, 349 of them probably are just Mark.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
No questions at all. Never committed a crime. Never, right? They're just Mark. They're just Steve. So get those people through fast, which they do in every other country. In the United States, you can get that service if you pay.
If you pay for pre-check.
Global entry, pre-check, and stuff like that. Everybody else waits.
Yeah.
And it's not just at customs or at the border where the airports are noticeably different. It's the terminals, it's the lounges, it's the food available, it's the conditions of the infrastructure, it's the roads that lead to there, it's their connectivity. Going into JFK is a almost desperately confusing and frustrating. And
right.
Like I said, we got to get a driver from Connecticut. What it would take to get there from Connecticut, like you wouldn't show up wanting to get on a plane if you took like public transportation. But here, like it's everything is in perfect condition, and the infrastructure I'm talking about, everything is in functional condition. And where it's not, you see that it under construction. They take care of their shit in ways we don't do here.
Yeah, yeah,
It's very upsetting to me.
Eye-opening. Yeah.
It was eye-opening. It's been so bothersome. That's why I've been hounding you to get on this and listen to me rail about this.